I'm Helen, and this is the tutorial video for the Vivaldi 4th violin part. So one of the first things you'll want to do is mark where you're playing. So anywhere it says tutti is where everyone is playing. So as you can see in my part, I've circled it and put an arrow. So just do whatever you need to do to draw your eye towards that tutti. So this movement starts with the tutti at measure 5, and that sounds like this. So in this section, we have a lot of repeated patterns, and they're going to be in half position. So we're going to have a lot of low first fingers in half position in this movement, so that's probably something you'll want to get used to and practice a lot. So in measure 5, we have the A sharp on the A string on a first finger, and if you want to practice shifting back and forth from first position to half position, you can play a first finger B on the A string, and then shift your whole hand down a half step to half position to the A sharp. And make sure you're shifting your whole hand and forearm as a unit to make sure your hand is in the right position. So just do this a couple times or as many times as necessary to be comfortable with this movement. And then in this pattern, we want to try to make it a little more musical. So instead of playing it all the same, which would sound like this, you can practice giving a little mini crescendo to the first 3 notes and growing into the big beats. So I'll do it a little more slowly. So if you can hear, I'm kind of growing into the F sharp and accenting the downbeat F sharp. That'll give each one a nice little shape of its own. So then after those half position passages, we shift back up to first position, this time on the E string on the F sharp. So you can practice this shift the same way, just shifting slowly from a second finger F sharp in half position to a first finger F sharp in first position, and just back and forth, however many times you need to be comfortable. So the next tutti we have is in measure 12, right? Yes, measure 12. So for this one, this is what it sounds like. So for the 8th notes in this passage, you'll want to play them around the middle of the bow and a little bit staccato, but not too disconnected. So you can practice this just on an open A, this bow stroke, and you'll want to start on the string. And just kind of stop the bow a little bit at the end of each note. And make sure you're still using a pretty good amount of bow, so as you can see, about this much as I'm doing here, so it's not too short and crunchy. We don't want it to be too short and crunchy. And we can also do a similar thing with accenting the big beats in this passage. So in this case, it's the Ds. So we can just accent those to give each of that pattern a little bit of a shape of its own. So as as you can see, accenting the D makes it more musical than if we were to play them all the same. So after this we have the passage with the trills, and it can be tricky, I know, at least it is for me, to play trills with a third and fourth finger. So in this passage we can just do one trill for each one, and that's plenty, that's enough. So slowly it's going to sound like this. So as you can see, I'm just going back and forth once from the D to the E for each trill. And then after each of these, we have an up-up. So make sure you pay attention to all the up-ups. And then at the end of the measure, we shift back down into half position, like we were at the beginning. This time from a third finger D on the A string to a third finger C sharp. So you can just practice this by sliding back and forth between the D and the C sharp on the third finger. And again, making sure to move your whole hand and wrist and forearm as a unit. And then you can add the last two notes after that. And repeat that a few times. This will help you get more comfortable in half position because it's a really useful position to know for this movement. The next tutti we have starts in measure 20 with some long whole notes and half notes using your full bow. And then with these, we have a retake between each one. So to practice the retake, you can play the C sharp and then do kind of a circle motion back up to where you're going to play the D, and then a shorter up bow, and then a longer down bow again. And you can just practice this circle motion a bunch of times. To make it more comfortable, and then speed it up slowly. It also helps to do a little breath or like a sniff between each one. So while you're doing the retake, just do like a little sniff. That also helps you keep the beat in your body more. So then we have the 16th notes. So for these, you'll want to play them about in the middle of the bow and on the string, and make sure you're doing a nice relaxed wrist. We don't want them to be too short and scratchy like this. And then in the last measure of this phrase, we have the up-up pattern, but this time we have 3 up bows in a row instead of 2. So that last one is a really sneaky up bow, so you'll want to make sure to pay attention to that. And I've circled it in all the parts, so hopefully that's helpful. So the last measure sounds like this. Our next tutti starts in measure 37. So in measure 39, we're going to shift up to third position on the A. So to practice this, you can start on a regular third finger on the E string, so an A. and then shift your whole hand up to third position to the same note, this time on a first finger, if you can see my hand. And then to get comfortable with this motion, you can just slowly shift your hand back and forth between first and third position. And you can tune them with the A string. So this is what we have in third position. We have the A and the D, first and fourth finger. And then for the last part of this, we shift back down to first position for a third finger D on the A string. So again, you can just practice shifting between first and third position as many times as you need to get comfortable with it. The next tutti starts in the pickup to measure 54, and it's a lot of the same pattern repeated over and over again. So in this passage, we have a lot of the same pattern as we had in the beginning, or a similar pattern. So to make this musical, we can practice again doing the mini crescendo through the 3/16 notes into the 8th note. So you can also just practice this on an open string to make your bow arm get used to it. And just add that little crescendo into the 8th note. In this passage, we also have a lot of high first fingers and third fingers, and also some low first fingers in half position. So it's helpful if you go through each one really slowly, and to help your hand get used to each position, and just block your fingers out slowly for each one and practice it with a tuner. You can also practice it along with a recording, and I'll play it through once more slowly right now, so you have a slow recording to practice along to. So some of these patterns go from half position to first position. Blocking your fingers out like this helps your hand get used to what it's supposed to feel like. And you can use this method with the rest of the patterns in this section as well. Our next tutti starts in measure 69, and it sounds like this. So for this one, for those repeated patterns, it's helpful if you practice blocking out your finger patterns so your hand knows what it's supposed to feel like every time. So, for example, the first one is and then the next one is a little easier because it has an open A, and then the last one is a little bit trickier because it has the G and the C sharp pretty close to each other across the string. So you can practice just changing your hand position between each of these patterns to help your hand get used to the positions. Another helpful practice tip for this passage and similar ones where you have a lot of string crossings is to take away the left hand and just practice the open strings so that you can practice the way the right hand has to cross each string without the left hand being a distraction. This will help you get used to how it feels to cross all of the strings. Then our next tutti is the last one. It's in measure 97, and it sounds like this. So it starts with the same pattern we had at the beginning with the half position. So you can use the same practicing strategies that you used for that first pattern at the beginning. And then in measure 100, we have that sneaky third up bow again. So and then we also have that sneaky up bow in measure 102. So you really want to make sure to pay attention to those sneaky up bows. And then for the last long note in the last measure, you'll really want to play it to its full potential because it's the grand finale of the movement. So really make sure to use your whole bow. And there's also a fermata over it, so once you're in orchestra, the conductor will hold it out and tell you when to stop playing, so make sure you just hold it as long as possible. I hope this video has been helpful for everyone. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions. Feel free to text me or email me, and I'm excited to work with everyone. Bye.